Welcome back once more. And let me say, we apologize for that. I'm sure you noticed that when I came on earlier, the sound wasn't clear enough, so we had to rectify that and ensure that you could hear every bit of the conversation. We're hosting political scientist and director for the Center for European Studies at the University of Ghana, Dr. Kwame Asah-Asante. I see him in the background, my former lecturer. Good morning to you, sir.
Good morning, Ben. How are you, my brother?
I'm very well. Sorry for the hold-up, a bit of a technical glitch, but it's now sorted out.
I understand.
Great.
Yeah.
We don't have that much time, so let's make tracks. We'll start with the Daily Graphic newspaper. President makes ministerial changes. 4 new nominees, 2 elevated, 1 reshuffled. Reshuffle na ba na. That's what many people are asking. There's also domestic debt exchange, scheduled finance minister to brief parliament, speaker directs. We'll be talking to you about that in our first big story today. Ghanaians recount experiences in Turkey earthquake, or Turkey, as we popularly know that country. Christian Atsu rescued, and our hearts were in our mouths, but thankfully, God has been so gracious. Christian Atsu is still with us, and we bless the Lord for him. Bondholders offered administrative window to tender. Again, that is going to feed into our first big story for today. You don't want to miss that one. But let's get into the details now. In terms of the reshuffle, so to speak, by the president. President Akufo-Addo has submitted to Parliament the names of ministers and deputy ministers with changes that comprise reshuffles, elevations, replacements, new faces, and the filling of vacuums created by the resignation of 3 ministers. The list, which was read out in Parliament on the first day of its 3rd sitting yesterday, had the Member of Parliament for Adansi Asokwa and former Deputy Minister of Energy, Kobina Tahiru Hammond, nominated for the Ministry of Trade and Industry. He will replace Alan Chemating, who resigned last month to concentrate on his bid to lead the New Patriotic Party as its flag bearer in the 2024 election. In the list, read out by the Speaker, Alban Sumana Kingsford Bagbin, the Abetifi MP and former Minister of State at the Presidency, Brian Echampong, has been nominated to replace Dr. Owusu Efri-Akoto as the Minister of Food and Agriculture, while the immediate past Director General of the State Interest and Governance Authority, Stephen Asamoah Boateng, takes over as Minister of Chieftaincy and Religious Affairs, replacing Ebenezer Kojokum, who resigned last week on grounds of health. Let's just take a look at a few more. I'll not go to the legal elements in there, but there's also an elevation of a Deputy Minister of Energy, Dr. Mohammed Amin Adam, who is the MP for Karaga as a Minister of State at the Ministry of Finance, to replace Charles Edubuahin. And there has been talk since yesterday, Doc, about the fact that when you look at Dr. Amin Adam, he has a purely economics background, though, I mean, he's even a member of The Economist in Ghana, certified. And some have been wondering whether this is a sort of move, because if you look at it now, Ken Ofori-Atta is the arrowhead, and right beneath him, so to speak, you would have Dr. Amin Adam. Whether this is a futuristic plan so that when eventually Ofori-Atta knocks off, Amin Adam would take over, that's a question that has been posed. But just to wrap with the few others so you can give me your reflections. A Deputy Minister of Local Government, Decentralization and Rural Development and MP for Ipiapim South, Osei-Bonsu Amwa, has been elevated as a Minister of State at the same ministry, while a Deputy Minister of Trade and Industry, Herbert Krapper, my good friend, has now been reassigned as a Deputy Minister of Energy to replace Dr. Adam, with the MP for Nshiayeso, Dr. Stephen Amwa, heading for the Ministry of Trade and Industry as a Deputy Minister. We all know him as Sticker, Member of Parliament for Nshiayeso. Quick reflections on this seeming reshuffle. I say seeming because it is replacing people who have knocked off, and 1 elevation, and then we also have those people coming in. What is your reflection on what has happened, Doc?
Yeah, thank you, Ben. Let me clear a certain misconception. People think that this is not reshuffle. It is. In strict political science terms, it is. What is reshuffle? Where some people resign office, or somebody resigns from office, and there should be a replacement. It's reshuffle. Where there is death, there is a replacement. There is reshuffle. Where the president wants to change people and to put them into different positions, move them from one ministry to another. It's a reshuffle. Where there is scandal, and for which reason you want to bring somebody in to sanitize the system, that's a reshuffle. So in strict political science terms, it is reshuffle. But as to whether it is meeting the interest of the public, that is the crust of the matter. And that is what we are looking at. If you look at it...
So just a quick intervention. So assuming none of this had happened, but one minister had left office and another person had been brought in, would that also qualify as a reshuffle?
Yes, it is.
Right.
It is.
Right.
It is.
Do go ahead.
If you look at all this, one would have expected that Mr. President, given the situation, the economic condition we find ourselves, you would have reduced the size of government. The government size is too, high, and it goes with cost. We need to pay these ministers, and we don't have the resource. People will tell you that, oh, how much? It's not significant. Remember that little drops makes the ocean. So even if it's $1, all right, we need to save that because we are in difficult times. Two, so when you look at it, the president didn't reduce the size, maintain the same size, and that is worrying. Worrying in the sense that it's the same government that is encouraging bondholders, pensioners, and then labor groups to be with the government, as in assist in the debt negotiations and all that. So they were expecting their contribution in a positive direction to safeguard the economy of this country. Why are they preaching virtues and practicing vice? That, for me, is worrying, because then the government is not sending good signals, all right? People have complained about what? Waste in the system. We want to see a manifestation of that in terms of government policy. There must be a clear-cut policy direction, and that leads to what? Cutting of waste. That leads to what? Unnecessary expenditure thrown away. That leads to what? Downsizing government. So all these things are prudent measures that we need to undertake in order to save the economy. But here you are, government will preach orders and government will not do what is expected of them. So that is unfortunate. Even though it is important that for constitutional requirements' sake, you need to have the ministers. I'm talking about the ministers for agriculture, trade and industry. That one, there's no problem about that. But the deputy, I disagree, and I disagree with respect, in the sense that you can what? Make do with the bureaucrats who will support the ministry to exist. Let us remember that the real, spade work is done by the bureaucrats who assist regimes from time to time. Government may come, government may go, but the public servant remain permanent in office, and they serve every government, irrespective of their political color and all that. So there is no point. The huge size of government is really affecting us. If you look at existing democracies, such as Britain, where they have paid ministers less than, I think, 130 or so, and you compare it to even the sub-region, Nigeria, they have ministers, numbers are in the 40s, all right? Why are we having such a huge...
I keep going back to the Malawian example, Lazarus Chakwera. He had, was it 31 ministers? He's downsized it into the 20s.
Yes.
And we have what, 110 thereabouts?
Yes, and I'm saying we can even reduce it to 19. 19, that is what the Constitution says, that cabinet should be made of 19. My proposal is that you can have the 19, and then the 19, 16 would double as what? Ministers for regions. So each of the region, there is a minister who's a cabinet minister who heads the region and heads what? Another portfolio. So that the other three, you add them, and then you get your 19. Why can't you govern with this? But all these things you can understand. It's nothing but job for the boys within the party. But you don't govern like that. No, that you are always looking at the interest of your party vis-a-vis the interest of the state. No, that doesn't work that way. It creates problems. And I want government to know that it is in their own interest to reduce the size of government, cut waste, ensure that expenditure is kept at the lowest level so as they can raise enough revenue to support the economy, because you need to fix the economy if you really want to contest in the elections, because the factors that influence voter choices, number one, is the economy. Voters consider the economy as the first most important variable when they are making political choices during election. And out of the economy, a lot of things also develop. We are talking about infrastructure development, which is a requirement by the Constitution, and is also one of the second variable which is important to a voter in this country, that they want to have what infrastructure dotted around the country and want to have their fair share, irrespective of wherever they live. So if you fail in infrastructure development, I'm afraid they are going to punish you for that. Not only that, issue of employment, which is about fourth important variable, is also critical to the voter, because there are a lot of people who have gone through academic training and yet can't find jobs or meaningful jobs and the rest of them. So you need to fix the economy. Everything is dependent on the economy. So the economy must be fixed if the party want to stay afloat. But my surprise and worry is that you have council of elders within the NPP, and you have well-meaning Ghanaians within the NPP. Nobody gets up and tell Mr. President that, yeah, Mr. President, we respect your decision, but we think that this one, we disagree. It can affect the fortunes of the party. Somebody must muster the courage and speak to the president in a very healthy manner and tell him what is ahead.
But the question is, will he listen? Will he listen?
Yeah, you have to make the attempt.
A lot of people have said, you suggest certain things. You remember, Mr. President himself has said that, even in terms of the reshuffle, that it is either his detractors who want his governments to fail, who are pushing for a reshuffle, or people who themselves want positions in his government within his party who are pushing for it. And when a leader sounds like that, most people have said he doesn't even want to listen. So to what end?
Yeah, that is why you need a Council of State. They don't need any other appointment. They don't need promotion. They don't need anything. They are the heart and souls of the party, all right? And that when they speak, the president must listen, all right? Yes, that is what. That is why we set
but
up
you
the
see,
Council
that's
of
where
State,
another problem is.
The Council of Elders.
The Council of State.
Council of Elders.
Doc, if you can hear me, the Council of State only has a consultative role. The president is not bound to listen to them. So there you say.
No, I made a mistake. I'm not talking about Council of State. I'm talking
about
Council of Elders within the party.
Okay, you mentioned the Council of State. That's why I went.
No, I'm sorry. It's about Council of Elders within the MPP. They don't need any appointment. They don't need anything. They are there to serve their party. The party interest is paramount.
But even there, the president is not bound to listen to them.
Yes, advice is never compulsory. But that, a good counsel is always good. And that is why we always go for wise counsel. So if there is a president and who doesn't want to listen to advice, then I'm afraid he doesn't want to leave any legacy. Because take it or leave it, 2024, MPP legacy will come to question. What is it that they can show to the world that they have been able to manage and manage well for the second tenure, for which reason the people should renew their mandate? That question will come to them. So it is about time they took critical decision now and then avert those dangers ahead. Right. Because they are not in good times at all.
We're not in good times at all. Let's, and even speaking of those good times, I sometimes always reflect on our tax and levy system and what we get in return. Every country, sometimes you talk about how high taxes and levies are, and people will say, yes, but that is how the developed countries have made it. But the question is, when we take all these sums of money, yesterday I ended up at the DHL office, and trust me, some of what I saw made me, there are people who can't get a woman with a child, a baby at her back, had, was it a phone or so? And if you look at the cost of the phone and the charges that have been meted out to her, mind you, the EVAT has taken over 15.5% or so. In addition, you can have someone bringing in a product that is, say, 6,000 plus cedis, and the tax component, customs duty and everything is about 3,000 cedis, about half the price of the item. I saw another elderly woman there who had items for her I didn't know, and similar situation. So we're forking out so much money to give to the state, customs, duty, this and that. If you look at the taxes in there, they will drive you crazy. Yet, what are my roads like? Do I have access to hospitals? When I even get access to a hospital, will I get a bed? No bed syndrome, still live. Look at our schools, Ghana schools of shame. No desks. Our little ones on the floor like lizards. If I had a fire incident, what is the likelihood that the fire service would get to me and salvage the situation before a major disaster? If you were to call the Ghana police in the dead of the night, would they be able to get to you to prevent you from getting robbed? You see, these are the questions. We're being taxed out of, our pockets, and yet. So I really don't know. For this country, as you reflect and say things are not what they ought to be, I think we're so far from what we ought to be, especially when we're getting so much, willing to give out so much, and we end up with a debt exchange program and everything else. But
Ben, sometimes some of these things is self-inflicting, all right? We have been to a certain level of non-charlatan attitude on our part that we don't care a hoot about the way our country is governed. That's a problem, because vigilance is the price of liberty.
You mean we are being too lenient on our leaders?
Exactly, and that we don't care a hoot. And we struggle to criticize and all that. We are not saying that insult, no. But look, government business is not a private business. So when somebody is running on your behalf, you have every right to what? A voice, let your voice be on the matter. Be civil, be measured, but then speak your mind. What happens? All right? Because if the person mismanages the system, you end up in IMF World Bank. And that is where we don't want to go. I find it strange sometimes some of the policies of government, and ask myself, to what end? You are not going to achieve anything. And yet, government will not listen. One of the problems also is that when we are voting, we consider other things, other peripheral issues, as opposed to what very important issues that determine who should really lead the country. We vote based on ethnicity, based on what party affiliation and whatnot, and leave out the real issues as to whether those we are going to put into office, they have what it takes to be in office.
Right.
I'm sure we have learned a lot, and going forward, we will think critically before we give our vote to anybody.
Let's quickly wrap with the Daily Graphic. We'll make it right in time. So on page 13, schedule Finance Minister to brief Parliament. That's the directive of the Speaker, Alban Bagbin, and he has directed the Business Committee of Parliament to schedule Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta to appear before the House to brief members on the affairs of the domestic debt exchange program. So that is going to happen. Interestingly, it sort of coincides with the day when the main schedule or activity for the rollout of the DDEP is to take place. Ghanaians recount experiences in Turkey earthquake, Christian Achu rescued, and the point to be made in the story, and like I heard it yesterday, was that maybe he made the headlines because of his status as an international footballer, but there are others, many other Ghanaians, some permanently living in that country, and others as students who have shared stories of how they experienced the earthquake, which also hit Syria and has so far reportedly claimed more than 6,000 lives. I listened to a report on the BBC that said that in the end, this could cost us some 20,000 lives. And this wouldn't be the first time. In the 90s, there was another earthquake like that, which took about 25,000 lives. And already the forecast is up to about 20,000 lives. But let me wrap with the Daily Graphic. Two stories. Bondholders offered administrative window to tender, and the government has created an administrative window to enable bondholders to complete the tender process following what the Finance Ministry described as technical glitches. The window will last until Friday, February 10 this year to enable all eligible bondholders who are unable to complete the process to do so. Those are the stories I want you to reflect on, but I'll just add this. Consume more cocoa. Kojo Ponkroma, Information Minister, says so. Good call, Kojo, but I have a question for you. Have you checked the price of cocoa products on the market? Your thoughts, Doc?
Yes, I'll start with cocoa because my parents were cocoa farmers and I have worked as a boy under cocoa farms for years. it has been the mainstay of this economy, and that if you look at regime by regime, we have not done ourselves good. When President Kufuor was in office, he visited Creek and had a lot of products from cocoa. I asked myself, what has happened? Are we ready to make sure that we roll that program where they've turned cocoa beans into so many things that will bring us money, value addition? This government touts its credentials of being able to come out with 1D, 1F, and the rest of them. What has happened to that project? Cocoa alone, I can say without fear of contradiction, can cure unemployment in this country. Cocoa giving us chocolate, pebbles, toffee, soup, and whatnot. But we have paid lip service to cocoa. And now we are even cutting cocoa trees to undertake what Galamsey, which government has turned a blind eye to that. It's a very unfortunate. So when the minister is saying that we should consume cocoa, I know his area where he comes from. My uncle has a cocoa farm there. Yes, it's a good call, but my question is, will his government master the courage to deal with those who destroy cocoa farms? Because the cocoa must exist in order to get the beans and produce chocolate. And now cocoa farms are being threatened. I want the minister to reflect on that and get that basis right, so that once we get that, all of us will come on board and support the court. But for now, I'm afraid we are doing ourselves a disservice. We are destroying cocoa farms, and government is sitting aloof as if nothing is happening.
Right.
I am worried. I am worried.
Let's quickly get to the Ghanaian Times. Oh, you have other reflections.
Yes,
go ahead.
I want to look at Turkey. It's a very, a very difficult situation. Our hearts go to those families who have lost their people and all that. It's a sad. I also have a friend. We attended a program in the US. I called her a few days ago. She's alive, and we thank God. We pray with them, and it is our hope and prayer that the good Lord will protect them and then prevent these things from reoccurring. Right.
Thank you for your reflections there. The Ghanaian Times reflects most of what we've already read from the Daily Graphic, but some standout stories. NPP communicators in Bono region boycott radio discussions. Why? The Bono regional communicators of the New Patriotic Party say they have boycotted all radio discussions in the region in connection with the deplorable condition of the Kwotokrom Yahwima Road in the Sunyani municipality. A statement signed by Mr. Asuma Salia, the chairman of the Bono Regional Communicators of the NPP and copied to the Ghana News Agency in Sunyani, therefore asked the government to reshape the roads and spare them, that is the communicators, of insults from residents. That's the first story there on page 9 of the Ghanaian Times newspaper. On that same page, provide guidance to guarantee 2024 victory. Council of Elders urges the Minority Caucus, and the NDC has urged leadership to provide the guidance that will guarantee a resounding victory for the party in the 2024 elections. What I'll wrap with: Auditor General recovers 2.2 billion Ghana cedis for state from disallowed expenditures. No surcharges. The Auditor General has recovered 2.2 billion Ghana cedis. It's quite a bit, but let me just say 2.2 billion of the 4.7 billion Ghana cedis it disallowed and recommended for recovery during the 2017 to 2020 audit exercises. Additionally, the service saved the state a total of 145 million from the special payroll verifications audit of September 30, 2020. That's 2022. This was contained in a special audit report on the recoveries made from disallowed expenditure from 2017 to 2020 and payroll savings. Quick reflections?
Yeah, I'll look at the Auditor General's report. Yes, that aspect where he has triggered this disallowance, process to claim money that belongs to the state, and he have found in wrong pockets, is worth commending. All right, but I have a problem with the Auditor General. My problem is that I am disappointed in this recent report that the office issued. Why? They mentioned that some COVID money were given to chiefs, and that somebody must pay for it and all that. What the Auditor General failed to do is to name those chiefs involved. Who is he protecting? And I am disappointed because we have seen reports where people did not close their books their names feature prominently in the report. So they need fair treatment. Those chiefs must be named so that we ask them questions, because nobody is above reproach. And I'm disappointed in that. But for the surcharge, I commend the Auditor General. But my disappointment is that those chiefs must be named so that they can also they owe us explanation as to what they did with what those monies. We are not saying that they misapply them, but we want to know them. We want to know them.
The Daily Guide this morning says New Kings take over NDC bench in Parliament, and of course we heard from Dr. Kasilato Forson for the first time. And while the earthquake was traumatizing the citizens of Turkey and among others, a Draman SHS dining hall collapses on 40 students. That's a story there. The Finder reflects the other stories we've seen. So does the Ghanaian publisher. Any final words before we...
Yeah, a Draman story, sad story. It tells us that we are not serious as a country. We are building cathedrals, and yet we are allowing buildings to collapse on our children. The hypocrisy on the part of some Ghanaians is what is at play. That there are things that impinge on our life. There are things that threaten our very survival. Yet we don't, think about our priorities and make them right. But we think about other things that are of, not immediate benefit to us. We shy away from this, and then we do things that really affect our survival. These children, they've lost their lives,
right?
But our state have failed them.
Thank you so much, Dr. Asa Asante, for joining us as always, and we wish you the very best of the day. Dr. Kwame Asa Asante is political scientist, director for the Center for European Studies at the University of Ghana. And that's how we wrap the news review. Up next, we have a lot for you in the world of sports. Do stay.